look at an example. Let's solve 2x squared plus 7x is equal to 15. My first step is to put it in standard form. So I get 2x squared plus 7x minus 15 is equal to 0. So I added a negative 15 to both sides to get it in standard form. Now I'm going to identify A, B, and C. A is the coefficient of x squared. So A is going to be 2. B is the coefficient of x. So B is 7. And C is your constant. The constant is a negative 15. Now be sure you see that it's negative 15. Now I'm going to substitute into the formula. X is equal to the opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So what I'm going to do is just make placeholders first. X is equal to the opposite of something plus or minus the square root of, I'm just going to put the parentheses, squared minus 4 times something all over 2 times something. Now in the place of this first set of parentheses here, we have B. B is 7. So I'm going to put a 7 in there. In place of this parentheses, it calls for B. B is 7. So 7 goes there. In place of these, I need A. A is 2. So I have a 2 in that position. And this position calls for C. C is negative 15. So I'm going to put in negative 15. This position is A. A is 2. So I put in my 2. Now that I've substituted in, I simply evaluate the formula. So x would be a negative 7 plus or minus the square root. Now I work inside symbols of inclusion first, and within the symbols of inclusion I square or raise the powers before I multiply. So I'm going to raise the powers first. 7 squared is 49, and now I'm going to multiply. A negative 4 times 2 is a negative 8, and a negative 8 times a negative 15. Well, let's pull in the heavy duty artillery to do that one. And we're going to do a negative 8. Excuse me, I put that in wrong. Hit the wrong button. I'm going to do a negative 8 times a negative 15. And I get a positive 120. So this would be plus 120 over 4. Continuing, I get x is negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 169 over 4. Now the square root of 169 is 13. So I can write this as x is equal to a negative 7 plus or minus 13 over 4. Or I get x is negative 7 plus 13 over 4, or x is equal to a negative 7 minus 13 over 4. Now negative 7 plus 13 is going to be 6, so I get x is 6 over 4, which reduces to 3/2. And here I get x is a negative 7 minus 13 would be a negative 20 over 4, which is negative 5. So my two answers are x is equal to 3/2, x is equal to a negative 5. So in this case we had rational answers. These are fractional answers. Answers that can be written as fractions are called rational answers. let's look at another example. Let's solve. 1/2 x squared plus 2/3 x minus 1/4 is equal to 0. Now, as always, anytime you have fractions, you want to eliminate them by multiplying both sides by the common denominator. The common denominator between 2, 3, and 4 is 12. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 12. 12 times 1/2 x squared plus 2/3 x minus 1/4 is equal to 12 times 0. Now 12 times 1/2 x squared is going to be 6x squared. 12 times 2/3 x is 8x minus 12 times 1/4 is 3 is equal to 12 times 0 is 0. So now we have it in standard form. 6x squared plus 8x minus 3 is equal to 0. Notice that the coefficient of x squared is 6, so a is 6, b is 8, and c is -3. The coefficient of x squared is 6, the coefficient of x is positive 8, and the c, your constant, is -3. Now I'm going to substitute in the formula, and I'm not going to write the formula this time, I'm just going to write it leaving the placeholders. I don't want to put the 2a in there, so that's just an empty space. Now what we want to do is to go through and put in the values. Now this calls for the opposite of b. b is 8, so here goes the 8. This calls for b squared. b is 8 minus 4a. a is 6. c is -3 all over 2a, which is 6. So opposite of b, plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4a c, all divided by 2a. Now I want to evaluate it. We get x is equal to a -8 plus or minus the square root of, squaring. 8 squared is 64. Now I do my multiplying. 4 times 6 is 24. 24 times 3 is 72. And a negative times a positive times a negative would be a positive. So it's going to be a positive 72. A -4 times 6 is a -24. A -24 times a -3 is a positive 72. Over 2 times 6 is 12. So I get x is -8 plus or minus the square root of, I need to do 64 plus 72. Which is 136 over 12. Now I can probably simplify the square root of 136, but I can't take it exactly. You'll get a decimal. So as I told you earlier, I want decimal answers rounded to hundreds. So since we're going round to hundreds anyway, I might as well pull in the calculator and do my work there. So the first one would be x is -8 plus the square root of 136 over 12. The second answer is going to be x is a -8 minus the square root of 136 over 12. So what the plus or minus means. Do it once with plus, once with minus. Okay, pulling in the calculator, we're going to do both of those calculations.